Good evening. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My first question is, would you mind introducing yourselves briefly or not so briefly? And I am adding a first question to that. Could you please add, what is your most imminent priority with regards to preparedness? Is it preparedness or is it readiness? Because I paid attention to what Professor Van Damme said. Can I pass the microphone to you? Or, yes.
I can take that one. My name is Jarosław Waligóra. I work for the European Commission for Directorate of Health and Food Safety, and I work in the unit which is dealing with health security. So to reply to your question, I would say that for my unit and myself, the main priority is to create a system where member states health authorities can come together and collaborate on preparedness, on response to health threats, not only to pandemics, but not only to biological threats, but as well to chemical threats and to environmental threats, but to create that environment for them to respond to what is possibly coming. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The same question for you, Marco.
Yeah, I'm Marco Cavaleri from European Medicine Agency. I'm head of the Department of Public Health Threats and I'm chair of the EMA Emergency Task Force. So clearly the Emergency Task Force has been working very hard during the COVID-19 pandemic and also with Mpox. And of course now we are trying to streamline our processes to make sure that we can advance medical countermeasures as soon as possible and as rapidly as possible in the face of whatever the future will bring to us. But of course to the point of preparedness, which is this broader approach also, it's true that we have this readiness, to follow Pierre's suggestion, kind of way of working in which we look into what is emerging as being prominent or potentially could cause an emergency. And that's why Mpox, Clade 1 in the Democratic Republic of Congo and avian flu are on top of our list, and we started working. And again, it's about readiness, but we need to do it now, because what we learned is that if we wait too long, we will be late, and we will not have in place all the type of studies and research that we need to do in order to advance medical countermeasures.
Thank you very much. Yotti.
Thank you,
Raquel Yotti.
Raquel Yotti. I'm from Spain. I'm the Special Commissioner for Cutting Edge Health, PERTE. I will explain a little bit more about what does it mean. First of all, I want to congratulate the Belgian presidency for organizing this event and for putting this very important topic on the agenda. We had the experience of organizing the presidents last semester, so we fully understand the complexity and the hard work that is needed for it, and so congratulations for it. There are some subjects that we work on during our presidency that are linked to this one. We work about the role of research infrastructures to face most important challenges, and this is one of them. And we also work on precision medicine. And if we think about precision medicine as the process of integrating biomarkers information with other sources of data, including not only clinical data, but socio-demographic information, behavioral information, environmental exposure, it's something that is closely related to the One Health approach, in which all these interconnected data are crucial. So there are some links between the work we have done. And well, answering your question, I would also like to share with you that I was the director of the National Institute of Health during the pandemic in Spain. It was the main funding public organization for biomedical research and also a public health institute. So we were in a situation in which we realized that maybe the most important thing is to have data that is acute data and is ready to be shared and to be used by the community for research purposes and also for public health directly. So data, I think, is the clue. And the possibility to share data in a global scale is something that not only in Europe, but globally is something that we need to work on.
Thank you very much. Same question for you, Barbara.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Barbara Kerstiëns, working as head of the unit Combating Diseases in DG Research and Innovation. I would like to be, us collectively, to be ready. And I think the important next steps or immediate priorities are to get the pandemic preparedness partnership going, which means that a continuous dialogue with our member states, with the Commission services, and with the scientific community. And to be able to build on what has built since a while already, but got a momentum through the COVID pandemic. We have a lot of structures, infrastructures, platforms, discussion groups that now need to come together in something that is easily understandable, rational, but also functional, that would allow for quick decision making. And I can only but highlight the importance of capitalizing on the data that are out there and allow them to be shared. And then as the subject for this conference is on one of the elements, important elements is this making Europe an attractive place for clinical trials and have them conducted notably in the context of pandemic preparedness and response.
My name is Cornelius Schmaltz. I'm head of the unit Analysis, Intelligence, Gathering and Innovation in DG HERA, the Health Emergency Response and Preparedness and Response Authority. And my priority would be, apart from the fact that I've only been there for 6 years, for 6 months, 6 weeks, and my top priority is actually to not only get it right with the scale of time that I'm using, but also to understand in more depth what HERA is doing and to really be on top of all the files. But for the purposes of this conference, I would say my top priority is to get the coordination mechanism on clinical trials together with colleagues in my unit and with DG RTD working in spite of or because of the complicated structure to really make this work in the preparedness phase and then hopefully also in the pandemic phase.
Thank you very much for that. So I'm hearing a lot of recommendations. I'm hearing a lot of shoulds. So my first question would be, what can we do? It's happening now. There's a breakout. What can we do? I thought let's start with an easy question.
Yes, of course. I mean, I think we already, as a Commission, we responded already quite early to these lessons from the COVID and from the health policy perspective. That was adoption of the regulation of the serious cross-border threats to health, which actually is trying to cover some of the gaps which we identified there. So just to give you some examples, what we already implemented and what make us more ready to respond is that we have now a group which is Health Security Committee, where we can bring all together member states to issue opinions, recommendations on certain aspects related to health threats. We as well, we have to be ready for that opportunity of the outbreak as well at the EU level, and here we have opportunity now to declare public health emergency at EU level. So in order to do it effectively, we had to put in place certain legal elements to that and system behind that, together with the advisory committee, which is very a big group of experts from different areas. As such, a decision at the EU level will not only impact public health, but it will impact whole society. So we need to have people there advising Commission on that from different perspectives. On data aspect, which was mentioned here, which is crucial. I mean, we've seen that actually that lack of availability of data, which can support public health decisions, and there are the quality of that data, and as well the time where this data was available, that was something which we've seen as well from the policy side. And here there is a development of the platform by ECDC in Stockholm, our agency, and the platform is trying to bring this data from different member states, from different sources, to make it available, and to make it available when we need that for those public health decisions. I will stop here, but I can give you some other examples as well of the activities which we are implementing now.
I just want to talk to you about data. So imagine I'm an annoying 5-year-old and I want data now. Please. What is available? Which data is available now? What can we work with? I think so, yeah. Yes or no?
Well, I think that we have data. The data is there, but we need to identify what kind of data is has the ability to be used in an acute moment, in a timely manner. So it was exactly what happened at that moment. We needed the data at that moment. So now I think that actually we are doing some things to have the data. We have worked very hard during the last years. At least as a member state, we have a plan. We have the Recovery, Transformation and Resilient Plan that we initiated in the economic recovery phase with the support of the European funds, with the Recovery and Resilient Facility. And in that plan, that it's not only focused on health, but in the whole economy, we introduced as a strategic point within the agenda, the need for collect health data and public health data in a manner in which we will be able to share the data with other countries and in a robust way. So I think we're on the way. Actually, the flagship initiative that is called PERTE is an acronym from a strategic project for economic transformation focused in health. It's not only about protecting citizens, but also to create economic growth, including the partnership with industry and with all the stakeholders. So, well, I don't want to capitalize all the time, but I think we have advanced.
Just on data, and as well what was our approach to testing, for example, and obtaining data during COVID pandemics. So countries has different approaches. Some of them invested a lot in testing people, and we had these results from patients, but it was not necessarily something which we needed for public health decisions making. So that now what has happened, ECDC had issued a document which is suggesting a new way of collecting data, surveillance of respiratory diseases, to give us a better picture which shows not only data on COVID, but as well on RSV, but as well on influenza, and to have this data collected in a comparable manner, and as well using different samples that we used to do during COVID pandemic. So we are shifting now a bit to the different way of surveillance, different way of collecting data, to have them really collected in a way which will help us to take better decisions.
Okay, the 5-year-old is a little bit satisfied. We have a Mentimeter as well, so if you would like to grab your phones, a QR code should appear at some point. The question we will ask all of you is, are we better prepared against the next outbreak of a pathogen with pandemic potential? Are we ready now? Is it? Yes, okay. Does anyone feel like commenting on that? So are we ready now? Are we prepared against the next outbreak? Yes, Meg?
Yeah, I think we got a lot of lesson learned from COVID-19 and Mpox, but I don't think we are yet there. And you know, we heard from Herman and others, and you know, about data Europe has been slow in generating data from clinical trials compared to other regions, and indeed, you know, we as a regulatory agency making recommendations on therapeutics and vaccines, we had to use data coming from other regions. And that's why number one is to improve the ability of Europe in doing clinical research in a less fragmented way, and also avoiding this research waste that has been one of the major issues during the pandemic. But I don't think we are yet there. A lot of initiatives are in place. Cornelius mentioned this group that will try to coordinate the funds. We, on the EMA side, we're working with the Commission and the European network to improve the ability of rapidly approving clinical trials during emergencies. So clinical trials is an important area, but even on the observational studies, even all the vaccine effectiveness data that we use to make recommendations for COVID-19 vaccines were coming from Switzerland, Israel, UK, US, and we were wondering, why not Europe? You know, it's a big pot of people, you know, so it's still difficult, and we're struggling to see why we are not competitive here. So there is still some more to be done, and a long way in order to allow Europe to do what we want it to be, you know, to be really a place where data can be collected very rapidly throughout the entire spectrum of evidence, from randomized clinical trials to observational studies and to other data on surveillance, because I don't think we are yet there.
Yeah, I would concur with Marco. I think it's too easy to take a pessimistic view. Of course, we're never there 100%, but we're better prepared at many different levels. I think, first of all, we're much better prepared scientifically. I mean, we have mRNA vaccines as one example. We're much better prepared at member states level. It will not as easy as now, as it was at the time of the outbreak of the pandemic, occur that the member state happens to not have any significant PPE stockpiles. I think these things we have learned, and we are also prepared much better, I think, at European level. Let's not forget also I still think, overall amazing success of procuring vaccines at the EU level, in spite of all the skepticism and things that these kind of decisions in the health area usually trigger in member states. I think that was an amazing success. And with the structures, of course, that exist also in HERA, nothing is perfect, but I think we're much better prepared.
Well, apparently you're not the only one, and I'd like to ask a few questions to the people who said yes, because I find that very interesting and hopeful.
Yes, if I can comment on these questions which we see and responses, because for me there are a bit of contradictory questions, and I don't know how you see this, but I would probably respond as Cornelius said. I mean, we are probably better prepared, but we are not yet there. I mean, we are not ready, and so I don't know to which one of those questions you replied, but I see that we see not so optimistic picture here. But it definitely, I think we see a lot of progress. We see a lot of those lessons learned already implemented, but we cannot say that we are fully prepared. That's clear as well.
What are you the most interested in? I will find them and I will ask them a question. I'm interested in the yeses, but I'm an optimist. I think I'm more of an optimist than you are, maybe. Should we track down on yes? Who said yes?
On a personal level, at least, I am much more prepared now than I was when the when the pandemic broke out. So, if everybody is more prepared, or if everybody has a little bit of more preparedness, then I think as a total we are more prepared. But if we as structures are more prepared, that I don't know if it's true. But on an individual level, I think at least for me as a researcher, I'm more prepared.
I was just going to ask you what you do. Could you tell us something about yourself, or is that too intrusive?
No, I'm a statistician at the Oslo University Hospital, and was part of the EU response project that some have heard about. Yeah.
It's so refreshing to hear that you can go through a pandemic and come out like this. Who else said yes? Or who else said no? Who else was very... Would you like to share why you said yes? I'm giving you this job.
I said yes, but I must admit, of course, it could be better, but definitely better as it was at that time. I'm Mark Bont and I'm CEO of the eCrate network, and Let's say if H5N1 turns into a pandemic next week, we would have 5 trials up and running for influenza. So that would start not in 14 days, but in 1 minute. So yes, we're better prepared than we were in February 2020 or January.
Okay, fantastic. Where are the pessimists? I want a really, really big pessimist, just for the... He's really pessimistic. Okay, be really pessimistic. I'm going to stand there.
Yeah, we are better prepared, I'd say, but we need to keep an eye on the frustrations that led to that people might not be as engaged with the next pandemic as they were with the one that was just over. So there are pluses and minuses, so to say. I speak from the perspective. Pardon? How do we need to be more engaged? Well, it's a sort of burnout of people who are still suffering from the work hours and from the working day and night, and you can talk to the clinicians in the room, and they will exactly know what's meant. But we are better prepared in terms of the networks that we have, and speaking as coordinator of the Accelerate network and the other networks, we are better prepared, and we just need to keep what achieved. We need to keep that up and running. And that is a threat, because they are running out of money very soon, quite some of them.
Let's talk about money. Thank you very much. I'd like to talk about money to you guys. Anyone else want to... Coming. I'm not going to throw it to you.
I'm not a pessimistic, but I think we also should not aim that we will be ready at a certain moment for everything. So I think we should always keep the public and ourselves alert that we never can be 100% prepared, and pathogens or pandemics are part of our life. And I think we raise wrong expectations that we can control everything. So yes, we need to do better, and there are a lot of things to do, but we will be never ready, and I think we should not pretend we are, and that also aligns with your latest comment. We need to continuously exercise and be agile for that.
Feel free to comment, jury members, panel members. Careful, there's a very annoyed 5-year-old coming your way again. Because in my 5-year-old mind, everything can be fixed with money. So we need more funding, I just decided. Who gets the funding?
It's about what would you like to fund? What is the goal that you would like to achieve? What's the level of effort needed? And only when you have decided that, then you will be able to collect the funding. So that's why it's so important also to work together with we as Commission and with the Member States at EU level to get that strategic vision and say, now it's time to invest in this, and now it's time to invest in that. And then who gets the funding, that will be worked out later on. Because just throwing pots of money at something that is not of strategic importance or relevance, or will deliver results 20 years down the road, yeah, that's maybe not a priority in the context of pandemic preparedness. And that's the challenge when we talking about research, is that as COVID-19 pandemic brought out the vaccines, that the mRNA vaccine were the result of years of investments. So the challenge in this area of pandemic preparedness research is that you have to have in parallel funding for innovations of which you're not exactly sure when or where they will deliver, but you need to invest in those. And then at the same time, stimulate, foster, capitalize on the low-hanging fruit. So it's a kind of dual track, funding track that you need to keep in mind. And then also avoid the fragmentation of funding or the duplication of funding. And that's why I'm repeating myself as a broken record maybe about this pandemic preparedness partnership, but it's a platform for dialogue with the member states to align the investments that are important.
Is there anything you would like to add, Margot, or is that just...
No, I agree, and I think there are many areas to think about, but it would be good to have a more strategic thinking, you know, in the entirety of innovation and what we want to achieve, because indeed the fragmentation of how Europe works is not helping here, so we need to think about a different way of integrating all the different parts, innovation, what we want to achieve, what are the threats right now that we need to prioritize, and to do this in a global setting, so not to work in isolation. That's also why we are working very closely with WHO, with entities like CEPI, with American bodies such as the NIH, because we need to have a global perspective on how to advance all the activities that are so important for preparedness and sharing the burden, because, you know, again, we should avoid duplication also not only within Europe, but also with other regions, and making sure that we're doing our best to achieve what is needed. But I would like to see a more coordinated strategic thinking in Europe.
We were talking yesterday morning, we were talking about our fantastic visual artist, our visual storyteller, who was telling me that there is such a thing as a, when people over the whole world think in terms of joy, happiness, playfulness, they more or less envision the same thing. There's like an archetype of phenomenon and emotions. Can we come up with a similar vision for pandemic preparedness? Could we align our archetypes?
Well, I just wanted to say that what I've seen here during these 2 days is that we are very well aligned. We are been talking about collaboration, about the need of data, the need of open science and sharing, and I think that it's something that everyone in this room is thinking about. So I think that the goal is shared, and I'm not is exactly the same enjoyer of that kind of things, but I think that what we need to do is something that we share in this room.
Oh, and I wanted to add to what you're saying, and then maybe with a little touch of can-do mentality. We have a shared goal, but we can do.
Yeah, in the same direction. I think the basis is what you said and what is actually also in the room here. What we see the result there. So collaboration, public trust, coordination, funding, planning, all that is a very good basis and really a shared vision. I would add to that in the same sense as Barbara, some sense of effectiveness and speed, because we don't have necessarily 2 days for a conference in Antwerp when the next pandemic breaks out, or not to discuss these. I mean, these very basic questions should hopefully be rather advanced, and we can then go to action quicker. So speed and efficiency added to all of what is on the table there.
I'm drawing from the feedback that I'm getting that everyone is very happy with this initiative, but there's still the sense of what does it look like? What is it going to feel like, taste like? Hence the question. Again, I'm channeling my inner 5-year-olds. What do you find, what do you think about the results of our second question? Is there anything that strikes you aside from collaboration? We talked about trust, we talked about coordination, we talked about funding. Is there anything else that strikes you as new, different?
Maybe I would like to add new models for collaboration to be innovative also in the procedures and the tools that we used to collaborate, especially regarding the public-private collaboration. And it's also related to funding, because we need to engage not only the public institutions, but also the industry. And it's something that is not so straightforward. So this need for innovation, it's something that we need to take into consideration. And the other thing that I would like to add is training. I think that during these 2 days we have talked about training in different ways, and is something that we need also to incorporate to the strategic agenda, and to think about models, also to collaborate with not only the academic institutions, but also with the national health centers, and also with the industry to provide the training that that we need for the workshop to support this initiative.
Mary, I mean, what I see is missing, and I think it's very important from my perspective, is One Health approach. We are talking about avian influenza. We've heard about that several times today and yesterday, and this is something that really can be tackled only with One Health approach and collaboratively together with people working on animal health, environment as well. We cannot solve that problem alone here in public health and health systems. So that's something which we really have to emphasize and work together. This is linked as well to trust, because when we talk to people working on animal health or environment, we see that that, for example, the risk perception is very much different from those people working on health side. So to build that trust, understanding of different arguments in different in those areas is something very important. And I can just echo you on training, and this is we've heard about importance on health professionals, but I would like to emphasize as well importance of public health professionals and their availability, well-trained workforce on public health is very important. And here as well, just to mention one initiative by ECDC, which is EU Health Task Force, which is actually providing a group of public health professionals which are ready to support countries in case of an outbreak or in case of any need for preparedness or response to pandemic.
And if I may add, touching on the One Health approach, which is indeed very important, and I can't see all the letters that are, maybe it's already written there, but I think there's also, we need to keep the broad picture when we're talking about pandemic preparedness. It goes from surveillance to pharmaceutical interventions and non-pharmaceutical interventions, and a good understanding of human behavior. So I think there's still quite some work to do in the context of the One Health approach, have this kind of integrated ecosystem-related surveillance mechanism for which maybe research can contribute. And then on the non-pharmaceutical intervention, there's also maybe something that we can work together on with the member states, because that also was, in fact, the first things that could be done at the start of COVID-19.
To add very briefly on innovation, I agree, that's something that we have to work on, and innovation will be in science, first of all, from basic immunology to how to design clinical trials, how to conduct research during emergencies, different way of approaching this. So we need to be creative, but also innovation in the architecture. So during a crisis, you cannot work in the same way that you work in peacetime with all the European architecture, because it will be too slow. You need to think about different models of working that are much more streamlined and much more efficient, because the situation requires. And we need to work on that. And maybe the last point, public trust, very important. Pierre mentioned on the vaccines, one of our major concerns at the next crisis will be people be ready to be vaccinated? Will they accept vaccination? We need to be convincing. We need to be convincing. So we need to think about communication, how to tell the citizen in Europe and elsewhere, that the vaccines have a positive benefit risk, and it's worth doing that. And that requires a lot of thinking up front, and we need to be prepared on how to do that, including this issue that during the pandemic we saw that citizens were extremely disoriented by the fact that different member states had different recommendations on how to use the vaccine. So there, we need to think about a different way of working. We need to think about coming up maybe with joint recommendation at the European level, because otherwise vaccine confidence will go down and we will have a major problem.
When I talk to my professor, because I work in academia, I very often ask him the question I've been annoying you with. Imagine I'm a 5-year-old. Explain to me in layman's terms what happens. Is that something you think about as well in terms of communication, simplifying things, making things concise, narrowing it down to an elevator story so that people can understand and make it more comprehensive?
I've been exposed quite a while to media interviews and communication to the public, and has really been challenging because, science is not simple. And it's not easy, to really go down to very simplistic way of describing it without the risk of being misunderstood. And also, what journalists always told me, you should maybe, can you be more direct? What is and what is not? And that's very difficult to say, and that's a challenge. I don't think there is an easy solution, but we need to work here with specialists in communication, how to do better and how to be effective in communicating to the public in this respect.
Yes, I totally agree with you, Marco. And it's, I'm not a scientist, I'm a public health expert, but not a scientist. And outside pandemic as well, sometimes it's really difficult to get the essence of what the scientist is telling me, and what does it mean, and what action should I take or not take. So I think on the side of the Commission, we are fully aware that we need to improve our external communication in that context. But I think the scientific community should help in that and look at themselves as well. But then you have an additional complication that, and COVID-19 was a good example, we did not know what we were facing with. And there was no clear answer. But still, you need to be able to communicate in such a way that people can accept that there is uncertainty. And I think in terms of preparedness, this is something that we could further work on.
I think for everyone, the hardest thing to say is, I don't know. I mean, it applies to journalists, it applies to scientists, and I think that maybe that's the one thing that united us for such a long time, that none of us knew what was going on. Something I wrote down as I was listening to Ruth Mueller, science is ever evolving, but are scientists evolving as well? If it's an awkward question, I was just wondering, because again, based on my experience from working with scientists, it's just very difficult to get a scientist to say, I don't know. And sometimes that's the answer.
Yeah, I just wanted to make I think what Barbara said was absolutely key. Communicating uncertainty is very difficult, so just really but it is also essential to be in line with, I think, also what Pierre had on his slides, that we also need to come across as authentic. So if we want to be authentic, we also need to admit where we don't know, and that's when we remain credible. And I think we've seen good examples of that in the pandemic and not so good examples. But also on your question, I mean, I don't want to come the panel to be across, well, are scientists evolving? And nobody wants to respond like, no, they're probably not. For me, yes, of course. I mean, how can you even have that question? I mean, science evolves, scientists evolve, generations evolve. We have scientists are probably among the ones that are most self-critical because they constantly see their own predictions not being proven correctly by the experiments. So for me, being a scientist is a continuous self-improvement and self-development program. So,
Professor Goossens, in French we say, j'ai mis mes pieds dans le plat. I think I need a bit of help here from a professor.
Yeah, well, as scientists evolving, yes, we are getting old, as you can see the color of my hair, but that's another story. Yeah, but I wanted to come back to what Marco said, and that is we need more strategic thinking. We really need more strategic thinking. What do we want to do? What do we want to achieve? And I would add to that, we need also a lot more political support. And here I would really ask people in the room here who are connected to presidencies to make sure that it's on the agenda for the next presidencies. And I will again compare this to what we did in Europe with antimicrobial resistance. We had the first EU conference organized by Denmark in 1998 called the Microbial Threat. That was the first time we discussed at the EU level. Then we had the Belgian presence in 2001, and then we had at least 8-9 countries organizing this during their presidencies to such an extent that people got fed up with it. But it became very high on the political agenda, and I would really, really hope and ask countries who have the next presidencies, and that's, for instance, Hungary this year, but then it's Poland, it's Cyprus, it's Greece, it's Italy, it's Spain is much later, and Poland is coming next year, I think. Really put this on the agenda. Put this on the agenda of the EU presidency. Continue to have these meetings. and make sure that the political buy-in for pandemic preparedness and response. And I think that is one way we can make progress, because your question, are we better prepared? It's yes and no. Yes, because there are more tools, there's a lot more that has been done. The Commission has funded a lot of things, member states have been very active. We saw this in the interviews with the national funders. Some of the countries develop preparedness and partnership programs. So a lot of things has been done. But in a kind of, if you look at it, what is missing is the long-term vision, is the strategic thinking, and also the leadership is missing. That's what is missing. I mean, so many people are developing so many different things. How many policies do we have on sharing samples? Do you know how many? At least a dozen. But why don't we have just one policy? Why do we have 12 policies on sharing samples? But the leadership is missing. Who's going to decide here? I'm looking at the EU and at the EC. I mean, that's where the leadership, in my opinion, and I'm sorry, should come from. We heard from the interviews with the member states and with the national funders that they want to make sure that their autonomy is respected, and so they're a bit concerned about other people deciding for them. But there's a way of finding a solution for that. But again, what is missing is the strategic thinking, the long-term vision, and the leadership.
I see an arm being raised.
Thank you. Evelien de Poorter from the European Commission. I just want to add a bit of nuance to that statement of the need for strategic thinking. I think personally that there is quite a bit of strategic thinking going on. This morning in the session on the clinical trials, I mean, the vision for the worm-based networks, the coordination, the coordinated funding, the coordinated prioritization, etc., was discussed. I think from the experience in COVID, I would say it's not about the strategic vision that is missing, but it's who to talk to about it. In the sense that we talk about, so we come from the research funding perspective. We talk to the health people, okay, we need clinical trial XYZ, or we need data collection, standardized data collection on the new patients. But that is not the primary interest at the time of a crisis response for the health people. So we talk to the research funders. The research funders are not necessarily the health people, so they have other things, so they don't necessarily see where the priority lies for the research. So I think it's a bit of I think what has come out of the discussions in the past 2 days is the importance of the multi-sectoral, multidisciplinary, getting out of the silos. And I think that is really what should be coming in when we talk about the missing vision. I don't think it's a missing vision. It's about having that vision and developing together outside of our silos. Over.
I don't want to react on this point. I need Herman to say something on that. But I wanted to come back on something important that Herman said, which is the fact that, you know, after the pandemic, the politicians should not forget that this could come back again. So we are seeing this investment already happening, and this is a bad signal. So it's very important that we keep everybody aware of the fact that another pandemic such as COVID could come back, and it's much cheaper to invest in preparedness than having to face something without the tools that we need. So it's very important that funds are allocated in preparedness, even if at the end we will not need to use vaccines or therapeutics. It's much worth spending money now for being prepared for something that may never happen than having to deal with something that will happen and we don't have the tools. And again, we will have to rush back to try to have vaccines and therapeutics as rapidly as possible. So it should be kept on the political agenda from now on as a standing point.
The 5-year-old gets that. We had a last question to put to all of you. The upward question is, what are the main takeaways that you have learned throughout this conference? And I'm asking you the same question, if I may.
I think that it's clear, we already probably repeated that. It's about keeping the momentum, it's about keeping an enthusiasm, networks, people working together, building trust, to be better prepared?
I think, you know, there is still a long way to go, but there are people here in the room that are really willing to make a difference, and therefore, you know, they're willing to really work hard to make things improve and to get really a place where we are really better prepared.
I will add to keep working on capacity building and do it together in these collaboration efforts that we are building right now.
Yes, I think keep the momentum certainly, be able to think of out of the box for certain things and simplify on other things.
How do I escape the bullshit bingo? That's my question. I think...
And what is bullshit bingo?
Well...
Who said that?
It's using buzzwords without much behind it, I would say. But no, I think I would say, I've subscribed to what Herman just said. I think leadership, strategic thinking, and I forgot what the third thing was, is important, but that is in a European setting, which by necessity is complex. It's not a dictatorship. I think I disagree with Herman that democracy doesn't lend itself to preparing for pandemics. I think it does with accelerated procedures. So I don't want to swap the political system in order to be better prepared for pandemics. But yes, so leadership, strategic vision in the European context of a complex system.
We can work with that.
5-year-old?
I'm not a 5-year-old anymore, but I would like to thank you for putting up with my tantrums, to all 5 of you. Thank you very much to Cornelius Schmaltz, to Barbara Kerstiëns, to Raquel Yotti, Marco Cavaleri, and Jarosław Waligóra. Thank you so much.